Ooga, ooga. What we on? What we on? Ooga, ooga. Okay, we in here. What we on? What we on? Let me move this mic over here. What's up, man? Y'all know what time it is? Ooga, ooga. Okay, you in here with the Hood Indian, man. Once again, early morning, man. I told y'all we gonna get back to it, man. You can't let that nothing stop you, man. Yo, I've been looking lately, man, and y'all know what it is too, man. What y'all on, man? What y'all smoking? What y'all sipping, man? Y'all know it's coffee and blunts, man. We in here, bro. Doing big things, yo. Shout out to the Chiefs, man. Shout out to the goddesses. Shout out to everybody, man. Shout out to the Moors. Shout out whoever you are, whatever you claim, whatever you rap it to the full. You understand? But we gonna get into it, man. I got this bill I want to share with y'all, man. Show the effects of technology and its importance. You know what I'm saying? Its effect that it's had on um society today. So we gonna get into it. We gonna dig into it. We gonna stop. We gonna react. We gonna talk and we gonna build, man. We gonna get back to the knowledge like we've been doing, man. Like I said, man, shout out to the motherfucking tribe, man. Y'all know what it is, man. Hood Indian shit. All my hood niggas, I need y'all to stand up, man. Y'all know the vibes, man. But without further ado, let's get to
Hello, and thanks for tuning into Futurology, an Earth One subsidiary. This video is a compilation of some of the best documentaries on AI, and is an introductory video for this channel's AI series, which will take us on a journey from the ancient origins of the field of artificial intelligence to the birth of modern computational-based artificial intelligence, leading up to and encompassing the various types of machine, deep, and reinforcement learning algorithms, and then concluding with more grandiose sci-fi topics. The reason we wanted to do this is to give further context into how the field of AI has evolved, the prominent groups and figures responsible for it, and most importantly, so we can appreciate the advances in technology we all often take for granted today. Enjoy the documentary, consider subscribing, and let us know your thoughts on the subject matter in the comments below.
Good evening. I'm David Wayne, and as all of you are, I'm concerned with the world in which we're going to live tomorrow. A world in which a new machine, the digital computer, may be of even greater importance than the atomic bomb. Can machines really think? Even the scientists argue that one.
I don't believe that we can say yet that machines do think. I have a basic question which I always ask, and that is, are these producing anything really new? Until I see a machine producing genuinely new things, I will not agree that machines think.
I confidently expect that within a matter of 10 or 15 years, something will emerge from the laboratories which is not too far from the robot of science fiction fame.
The Thinking Machine, starring David Wayne. In a moment, that story.
With me tonight is Professor Jerome B. Wiesner, director of the Research Laboratory of Electronics at MIT. Dr. Wiesner, what really worries me today is what's going to happen to us if machines can think. And what interests me specifically is, can they?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer. If you'd asked me that question just a few years ago, I'd have said it was very far-fetched. And today, I just have to admit I don't really know. I suspect if you come back in 4 or 5 years, I'll say, sure, they really do think.
Well, if you're confused, Doctor, how do you think I feel? Professor Wiesner, I don't think I have to tell you that the conception of the robot, a thinking machine, has been man's dream for centuries, also his nightmare. Of course, up until recently, the exploitation of that dream has been largely in the hands of science fiction writers and my colleagues in the motion picture industry. You remember a great robot in the silent film Metropolis?
No, I don't think I ever saw that one.
Well, I'd like you to see that.
It'd be very nice.
Okay, Charlie, roll it.
That movie, that professor is still way ahead of us, you know.
You gonna see many, bro, like how they taught us certain things to learn in school, how we learned certain shit in school. You gonna see a bunch of this shit, yo. Bro, like how they taught us certain things to learn in school, how we learned certain
He
shit in
is,
school.
and you know, if I'd seen that movie as a youngster, I'd probably been afraid of science.
Doctor, when that film was made, and it wasn't too long ago, the thinking machine concept was still in the realm of make-believe. What do you think about it today?
Well, the reason that's such a very hard question to answer is we know so very little about thought processes or about information that makes up thought processes. You know, there are many things which machines can do today, which if they were done by human beings, you would certainly call thinking. Have you ever watched a child try to learn the alphabet? I've got a piece of film here that I'd like to have you see.
Down, up, down, up. Do you know that letter? M? No, it looks like an M, but it isn't. It's a W. An M upside down, isn't it? I'm going to make an X there, and you see if you can draw over the same lines that I make. Down, and up. Can you do that? The same lines, honey. That's right.
Pay attention to this. This is crazy. This is the same tactics and methods they use to teach us in school, bro. Your perception got a lot with how you learn
That's fine. What letter
things
is it?
and shit. You feel me?
W. That's right. Good. Now you see if you can make it.
Of course, she makes mistakes at first. The real question is, how does she ever learn to get them right?
I can copy yours. That's right. You copy mine.
Well, do you mean to tell me that you don't even know yet how a child learns the letters of the alphabet?
Psychologists who study the problem have a lot of ideas about what goes on, but no real explanation. A letter is simply a pattern, and we don't yet know how the brain recognizes patterns.
Do you know what letter that is?
L?
No, it's a P.
Well, do you think you'll ever understand these problems?
I think so. That's one reason we're so interested in the computer and what it can be made to do.
Are you suggesting that the computer can do what this child is doing?
Yes, I am. The computer is a remarkable machine, and later on in the program, we're going to see it write an original TV Western. But first, let's see how the youngster is doing here.
What letter is it?
L?
P. Now, can you tell me what this letter is? Do you remember this one?
The computer's becoming the new age, bro. The new worker, the new
It's a W.
politician, the new everything. That's why you gotta get on it. That's why I've been in this crypto. You gotta get to it.
Now let's see if the computer has as much trouble with the alphabet.
You mean we're going to see the computer do what the child did?
I hope so.
Now, does that really prove that machines can learn?
I'll tell you what it does. It compares the letter you write with the letter you first showed it. And as it gets more and more information about what is called a W, for example, it is more and more better able to make a judgment about whether the letter that's being written on the screen is in fact a W or not. Let's see.
Okay, Larry, let's read in the program again.
Well, at least I know what a program is. A program's the rules you want the computer to follow. Now what are they doing? Showing the computer the alphabet for the first time?
Yes, in just the same way the teacher did with a child. Incidentally, for convenience, you see we're using P's and W's too.
Okay, now we have those characters in the machine. We'll try some tests with them. The W. Call it a D. It's pretty poor, but on the other hand, it doesn't have much knowledge. Well, here's a P for
Try another P. Should get it this time. P. Wow.
Well, now that's luck. That's
Yeah,
pure
really
luck.
No, as a matter of fact, one thing the computer can't do is fool the teacher. On the next try, look at the line below the letter. The longer the line, the surer the computer is of its answer.
Good enough. That's a pretty good percentage as indicated by that bottom bar. 80%, sure. That's pretty good.
Now, do you call that learning?
Well, I know that if my wife and I saw our kids going through that process, we'd call it learning. So machines really can learn.
You know, we don't really know much about the thought processes, and this is why I'm so hesitant. But we are studying the problem. It's being studied in a very many places and by people in many disciplines.
You mean psychologists, psychiatrists, philosophers, and so on?
Yes, and electrical engineers and mathematicians and others.
Well, if the computer is this important, why haven't I heard more about it?
Well, the computer is a relatively new thing, and we're just really getting an appreciation for the full range of its usefulness. Many people think it's going to spark a revolution that will change the face of the earth almost as much as the first industrial revolution did.
Well, now this brings me back to my original question. Can machines think? Now, I mean by that thinking, that process we try to avoid when we have a problem to solve.
You mean like I'm trying to do in avoiding your question? Do you remember that puzzle about the cannibals and the missionaries?
I do remember that. That's when we tried to cross the river with the missionaries and the cannibals without the missionaries getting eaten.
Yes, that's the one. Well, out at Carnegie Tech, Professors Simon and Newell are doing some very interesting work trying to understand that kind of logical problem. Let me show you.
Problem.
This is Professor H.A. Simon.
3 missionaries and 3 cannibals are trying to cross a broad river so that they can reach a town on the other side.
Bless the tribe, bless the tribe. Y'all know what time it is, man. Hood Indian TV. Y'all know what it is, man. We in here. Peace.
They have a rowboat, which will, however, hold only 2 at a time. All of them know how to row. There's one difficulty. No group of missionaries and cannibals may be on either side of the river at any time if the cannibals in the group outnumber the missionaries, because the missionaries would be eaten. Now, the problem is to plan a series of trips that will get all 3 missionaries and all 3 cannibals across the river in the boat without anyone being eaten. Do you have any questions now, Barbara? Well, you may start now. Please remember to say aloud as much as you can about what you're thinking, and you may move the missionaries and cannibals to try different combinations of them.
There's only one boat.
There's just one boat, and only 2 can sit in it at a time. Why don't you take them across and see how it would work?
Yo, on Tukey, yo, I remember this test, yo. I don't know if y'all remember this test or you
Then
went
I
through this
have
test,
the missionary bring the
but I
boat
remember
back.
this test,
Take
yo.
one of the missionaries.
Careful, that man is going to get eaten.
Well, I guess I wouldn't do that. Is it possible for any of them to swim?
No, I'm afraid they are non-swimmers.
Well, I'll bring one of the missionaries over by himself.
Poor Barbara. You know, I sympathize with her. I remember how baffled I was the first time I tried that problem.
Well, Barbara's bright, and she'll get it after a bit. As a matter of fact, in a moment I'll show you her solution. That's why Professor Simon asks her to talk aloud as she works. So you'll have a record of what she says.
And then I'll bring the other one over, and that's it.
Very good. That's the correct solution. And now we'll go and try the same thing out with the computer on the coast.
Oh, no. Now, don't tell me you're going to try to get that computer to do the same thing.
I had to fail that test 100 times, yo. Like, and it's crazy because it's the way that it's presented. It's not even that it's hard. It's the way they present it to you that confuses you. Like,
that the answer you have there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it's both answers. We've typed out Barbara's solution on computer paper, too. Can you tell which is which?
Do I have to answer that? How does the machine do it, Doctor?
Well, Professor Simon thinks that logical processes are really quite simple and only appear complex because there are so many of them in cascade.
Well, does that mean that the machine tries every possible answer?
No, it does just what a person does. It tries those things which seem most likely.
Well, how does the machine know what's likely?
Well, a person knows what's likely on a basis of experience. The machine knows what's most likely on a basis of probabilities or reasonableness that has been programmed into it, that is told to it in advance.
Well, what else can computers do?
Well, many things, though, as I've already said, we're just really beginning to understand the capabilities of the computers. I've got some film to illustrate this point, which I think will amaze you.
That man isn't playing checkers against a computer, is he?
Sure, and it plays pretty well.
Now, which color is the machine playing?
Black. The player pushes those switches to tell the machine his moves. Incidentally, he has to make the machine's moves on the checkerboard as well.
Well, then how does he determine the machine's moves?
By watching those lights on the console. The machine also prints out its moves.
Who's that watching?
He's Dr. A.L. Samuel, an MIT graduate now with IBM. Dr. Samuel programmed the computer to play checkers so he could study machine learning. Let's see what it's printing out now.
How in the world did it do that? Dr. Wiesner, how does a computer work?
Well, it would take too long to give you a detailed explanation, but I think I can give you a simple explanation of the principles if you want. You can make a little box that you can put signals into, and every time you put a pulse into it, it adds. And with these devices, you can make adders, you can make multipliers, you can make devices which do a number of other mathematical operations. Now, with these various building blocks, and it takes just a very few of them, you can organize much more complicated mathematical problems. And what you do is what we call programming. You lay out a series of steps, and you have to tell the machine every blessed single step you want it to do, because it can't do anything unless you do this. And this we call a program. We feed it into the machine, and it carries out the operations we've told it to do one at a time. Of course, there is a saving grace here, which is very important. And once the machine has learned how to do something, it can print out into its permanent memory, the tape, or on a piece of paper of the kind we've seen, the instructions for doing this, and you never have to think about that particular thing again.
Well, does the nervous system work like a computer?
No, not really, though there are many similarities between computers and living nervous systems. But neurophysiologists who work on the problem think there are many more differences than there are similarities. The fact of the matter is, though, that both systems use
Halito, sis, how you?
potentials
You
and
got a
pulses.
cool name too. How you?
Then by following the complicated steps that a computer takes, the steps and stages in solving a problem, can you learn how or more about how the nervous system works?
But what you can learn is a good deal about thought processes, or at least simulated thought processes by this method. But it's very dangerous to carry this analogy too far.
Well, if I told you all about my particular problem, could you solve that on a computer?
Well, it'd probably take a
That's not
psychiatrist.
my problem. I think I better ask my question over again. You have to tell a computer what to do. In other words, all of the computers that we've seen have been programmed, that is, have been told by men what to do.
Yes, but you know, that's really not a valid argument, because there's every evidence that men are programmed too. That is, they have certain built-in programming.
Now, wait a minute, Dr. Wiesner. Are you suggesting that men are born with something put in their brains, like men put information into a computer?
Yes, they're not only born this way, but they get programming in other ways. That is, there are really two ways in which you can get programming. There is the hereditary part, that is the part you're born with. You can also get information or programming in your brain by experience, that is, by learning.
Well, surely in
Nah, I
higher
appreciate
animals,
it, sis. I
learning
try to
doesn't
bring, you
go
know what I'm saying,
We like to
something
think that it is,
immediately
okay?
relevant to the
Can you give
table. Like,
me an example
instead
of
of
a
the arguing
programming
and all
in
the
something
bickering
that
and shit. Like, I
provides
get that, but
And
like at the
I've
end of
got
the
something
day,
over here.
it's a lot of things that's
You tell
going
me
on,
what
and
the
I
silhouette's
believe
supposed to
over
represent.
50% of it is mental.
well, it doesn't
You feel
remind
me?
me
And
of
then when
anything
you add in
particular.
If
emotions
I
and all
hold
of
it
these
up
other
here
things,
like
then it
this, does it
heightens it.
look like
But
a goose to you?
you
Yes,
feel me?
it
So
does.
that'd be my
Now, if I
aim and
turn it
my goal.
around,
You feel me? Not to
what's it make
even
you
really
think
get
of?
caught up.
Well, if
I
we're
do.
still
I ain't
thinking about
perfect.
birds,
You
I'd
feel
say
me?
it was a
But
hawk.
my main
Pretty
goal is
well.
just
Let's
to
see if a
share the
duck can do as
information
well.
and perspectives. And, you know what I mean? Help people, get
The
different
ducklings
perspectives.
used
That's
in
it.
this
Think that's
experiment
it.
have
That's
been
all. Not
raised
tell
in
you what to do, what
isolation.
to think.
They've
Just
never seen any other
introduce
birds.
a certain type of
And there
thought
I see is our
to
friend the goose.
individuals. That's it. But that's all I'm trying to do, though. But I appreciate it. That's what I'm trying to. That's my aim. To to tweak the mind. You know what I mean? Arouse the mind.
Well, there wasn't any reaction at all, was there?
No, there wasn't. That's what interested Professor Melzak. You're seeing what happened when he first did this experiment in the London Zoo. If you were a duck, would you worry if you saw a goose?
You mean he will worry when Professor Melzak changes that goose into a hawk?
Well, let's watch.
Well, that's a really frightened duck.
Well, not all ducks react this way. Some are simply wary when they see their first hawk. Well, Mr. Wayne?
Well, what I gather from this is that this duck that never had been exposed in its life to any other kind of a bird can now suddenly differentiate between a goose and a hawk. Now, you call that some kind of programming. To me, that's what I would call instinct.
Well, I'd agree with you. Instinct is the word you use. I'm using programming, or at least that part of programming which is determined by heredity. You see, animals seem to start life with a large part of their nervous system knowing what to do. That's the reason why we breathe and why our heart beats and why babies know how to cry or when to cry when they need help.
Well, do you mean that instinct turns out to be some kind of programming that we're born with?
Yes, that's using our language. Let me show you some very interesting research that was done on the frog last year at MIT by Professors Letman and Maturano, which seems to indicate that some animals, at least, are born with very much more built-in information than we used to suspect was the case.
Well, does it show that we're born with programming?
But what it does show is that in the frog, at least, the frog's eye reports only very specific information to the brain.
You mean that the optic nerve of the frog doesn't report everything it sees?
No, it reports only very specific things, things which seem to be very important to the survival of the frog. Let's take a look at the next film.
Well, now, the frog doesn't pay any attention to those dead flies. Isn't he hungry?
Sure, but his eyes don't see them. He's hungry, all right. Watch.
Well, if he didn't eat any of the dead flies, why did he eat the fly on the string?
Well, you know, that's what Professor Letvin's trying to find out. It seems that the frog only sees things that move. Here, Letvin's looking through the microscope into the frog's brain, preparing to put a tiny electrode into one of the fibers in the frog's optic nerve.
You mean when the fiber sees something, it'll send a signal through the electrode that we can see?
Yes, and you'll hear it, too. Now Professor Letvin is putting a target, that semicircular hemisphere, in front of the frog's eye. And then, using a magnet on the back of the target, he can move a small metal disc around the target until he finds the point at which the particular fiber is looking. There, he's found it. See, it sends an electrical signal through the electrode.
Well, what's the professor doing now?
Well, he's trying to find out just what kind of things make this particular fiber react.
It looks to me as though this fiber reacts every time something moves.
It does.
Well, that could explain why the frog didn't eat the dead flies. They didn't move, so he couldn't see them.
Well, that's Professor Letvin's suggestion anyway. He said to himself, suppose the fibers in a frog's eye look only for specific kinds of things in the world around them. Now, as we've seen, one kind of fiber apparently only reports movement. And here, Professor Letvin is looking for a different kind. You see, this fiber reports to the brain when anything small enough to eat moves into view, and it keeps reporting as long as the object remains there.
Well, why did it stop reporting when the light went out and then fail to report when it came back on?
Well, think of the light going off as a shadow passing overhead, an owl, say. And apparently in a dangerous situation, the frog's eye only reports the danger, not food. Watch now as a long bar is passed through the field of vision. The bar is too straight and too big to be a bug, so you see there is no reaction. Professor Letvin's work suggests that the fibers from the frog's eye only report specific things to the brain, things related to the frog's survival. One group of fibers looks only for sharp edges. Another group, this one, seems to be a bug detector.
Well, now, I was always under the impression that the eye reported all light patterns.
Well, so are we all. I ought to add, though, that Professor Letvin's theories are not yet accepted by all people in the scientific community, or at least insofar as the implications about human vision are concerned.
Well, if Professor Letvin's theories are correct, we would have some explanation for instinct, wouldn't we?
Well, the existence of built-in coding or instinct was never really in doubt, although this is a very interesting demonstration of it. It's a demonstration, at least, of one kind of instinct, because it's obvious that the frog didn't learn to recognize flies, but was born with this ability already in its brain.
Well, now, if I may say so, people aren't frogs, are they?
Well, no one really suggests that people are pre-coded to the same extent that frogs are, but it's very clear that people also are born with a certain amount of information built into their nervous system. Let me show you something that'll prove this point. We're going to Geneva to the laboratories of Professor Jean Piaget and his associates. This is Dr. Barbel Inhelder working with a youngster of 5. By the way, how's your French, Mr. Wayne?
Well, it's not very good, I'm sorry to say.
Well, Dr. Inhelder here is filling one glass with milk. Then she's asking the child to fill his with exactly the same amount as she has in hers.
À boire exactement la même chose.
The boy says, you've a little too much.
On va enlever un peu.
Is it now the same height?
Oui. Oh non.
Non, pas encore. Faut que ce soit exact.
Voilà.
Exactement la même chose.
Là, c'est la même chose.
Exactement la même chose. Regarde. C'est parfait.
Non.
He's a real stickler, isn't he?
Comme ça?
Oui.
Voilà. On a exactement la même chose à boire?
Oui.
Moi, j'aimerais boire mon lait dans ce grand verre.
I would prefer to drink my milk in the tall glass. I have poured it all in the tall glass.
Oui. Regarde. Toi,
You and I, have we still the same amount?
de lait à boire?
Non.
Non. Qui a
Who
plus
has
à
more?
Verre.
Ici, dans ce verre,
this
il y a
glass?
plus à boire. Comment le
But
voir?
how do you know?
Parce qu'il est plus grand.
Because it is taller.
C'est chaud.
That's delightful, isn't it? Now, how could that child make that mistake?
Well, apparently, when we're born, we rely exclusively on our eyes to form our concepts of the world around us. He apparently had certain preconceived notions of the world around him, and some of these are wrong, and as he grows up, he's going to have to learn to correct them.
Well, then our eye apparently is programmed to tell us that that which is taller holds more.
Yes, and in nature, isn't that generally the case?
Well, I've always been under the impression that seeing is believing.
Well, actually, it's just the opposite. These experiments indicate that we tend to see only those attributes of objects which our nervous system is designed and programmed to see.
Then seeing isn't believing, but believing is seeing?
Well, it works both ways, but certainly believing is seeing. Watch this next piece of film.
Okay. Professor Wiesner, I've seen this before. Now, that window isn't square. You see, one side is longer than the other.
Yes, but no matter how many times you've seen it, I'll bet you still can't see through the illusion. What's the window doing now?
It's revolving. I know it's revolving.
Of course it is, but I'm certain that you don't see it that way. You see it as though it were oscillating back and forth.
Well, as a matter of fact, you're right.
You see, your eyes tell you that anything that is longer is closer to you, and your experience tends to confirm this. So you have to see the long side of the window as though it were in front, even when it's in back. You just can't see it revolve. Now, let's cover the window with a cloth. The cloth sides are equal in length. Now maybe your brain will let you see the window rotate. Look at the bottom corner of the cloth. Now do you see it revolve?
Yes, I do.
Now let's put a tube through the window. What do you see this time?
Well, that tube is bending back on itself.
You know why? That's because you've assumed the tube is made of rubber. Now, if you tell yourself that it's made of steel, you'll see it cut through the window instead of bending. Am I right?
Well, I have to think real hard that it's steel, right?
Right.
It's steel, it's steel, it's well, I'll be. Yes, you are right.
Now then, doesn't that prove that you tend to see what you believe?
You mean, Professor, that I am somewhat programmed? In other words, that there are rules built into me that make me react sometimes similarly to a machine?
Yes, you and everyone else.
Well, I think I'm beginning to get your point. I am born with certain rules built into me. But I think I can think. That is, I say I can think. Therefore, I shouldn't be too upset when a machine thinks just because it has rules built into it by man.
That's logical, isn't it?
Well, can you show me where a computer can do anything original? I think that might help to convince me.
Well, it depends an awful lot on what you mean by original. Would you regard writing a television Western as being original?
Now, do I have to answer that? What do you mean to tell me that a computer can really write a play?
Well, we can write pretty good plays. Matter of fact,
We will see the playlet written by the computer in just a moment. But first, from AMF, an expression of one company's aims in your interest.
You were saying that a computer can write a